Hello AFIC parents and kids. As you can see, this video is about taking a tour of the double bass. So as you can see, the double bass is part of the violin family. That's why it looks like a big violin or a cello. Sometimes people mistake this for a cello when I'm carrying it around, but it's actually called a double bass. And like a violin, it can be played with a bow. And if you know about violin bows, this part here is actually a special material. Does anybody know what it is? That's right, it's horsehair. Because if you were looking at the horsehair under a microscope, it's got a bunch of little bumps on it. So even though it looks smooth, it's actually pretty bumpy on a microscopic scale. And those bumps make the string vibrate when I move the hair across it. Now, this is a really big instrument, and as you probably know, the bigger the instrument, the lower the sounds. When you're playing something small like a flute or a ukulele, it makes high sounds, but a big instrument like this makes low sounds. Here's the lowest sound I can make. Kind of makes me think of like a foghorn. Now this instrument has a bunch of different parts. It's part of the string family, so of course the sound is made by moving the strings and getting them to vibrate. It also has a body, in this case a big body, so it can make those low sounds and project them. It has what's called a fingerboard. That's this piece of wood here that you press your fingers on to make different notes. And there's a neck that comes out of the body and a headstock on top. And just like your guitars and ukuleles, there are tuning pegs on the headstock that we can use to tighten or loosen the strings. You might notice these here, these are called F holes because they're kind of shaped like the letter F. And they're just like the sound hole on your guitar that lets sound come out of the body. Also, you'll notice this piece here. This is also called the bridge. On your guitar, the bridge might look a little bit different, but this connects the strings to the body, so the vibrations of the strings go through the bridge into the body, and that's where we make the sound and have it come out. Also, if you look closer here, this piece is called a tailpiece, and that helps hold the strings in place. So I've showed you that the bass can be played with a bow like a violin, but in some styles of music it also gets played just with your fingers. When you play with your fingers like this, plucking the strings, it's called playing pizzicato. When we play with the bow, that's called playing arco. In some styles of music like country, it's always played pizzicato. So there we can get a nice thumpy sound playing pizzicato. Also, you might do that in jazz music. One thing you might notice about the bass is that when you look at the fingerboard, there are no metal lines along the neck. As you have on your guitar or ukulele, those are called frets. And on the violin family of stringed instruments, there are no frets on the neck. The nice thing about that is you can play any note you want. All the notes in between are available. The tough thing about that is that you need to learn how to tune every note that you play by where you place your finger. There, I'm playing two A notes that are pretty much in tune, but if I put my finger in the wrong place, it stops sounding as sweet. So to play this instrument, you have to practice a lot to learn how to put your fingers in just the right place to get a good sound and play in tune. When the bass is played arco using the bow, it's often in classical music. One of my favorite classical composers to try and play is Bach. That's an excerpt of a very famous piece that Bach wrote called the Cello Suites. As I mentioned before, jazz is another style of music that gets played on this instrument, and that's really what I originally studied when I took this instrument up. As you can see in jazz music, the bass can sometimes play melodic lines, but often it's used to play walking bass lines. That's where we keep a very steady walking beat, plucking each note with our fingers, kind of like our fingers are taking a walk, like this. You might notice that sometimes I shake my fingers a little bit when I'm playing a note. That's called vibrato, and we can use that to add emphasis or interest to notes that we play. When I play a note without vibrato, we can call that legato, nice and smooth. But if I add vibrato, it just makes it a little more interesting to listen to. So I can do that to notes that I want to stand out. Another interesting part of the bass is down here. Take a look at the very bottom. This is called the end pin. And the end pin allows me to set the bass at the height that's right for me to play. I'm a pretty tall guy, so I need to have the end pin out pretty far. Let's see if you can see it as it's sitting on the ground. There it is. I'm Mr. Joel, and this has been AFIC's tour of the double bass. I hope you get to try an instrument like this someday. It's really fun.